So I want to address how it is that we're going to be leaping into the future. A lot of this is in the direction that Bruce just spoke about the future of power, both fission and then eventually into fusion, and some of the specific projects we're working on right now on revamping a project called NAWAPA. As a general approach, we have to think about moving forward in leaps. You can't nudge yourself forward. People might say, well, the economy is very bad, so we can't afford very much. So as was brought up about Princeton plasma physics, say, well, we don't have enough money, so we'll just give you enough to never do anything. Isn't that nice? At least we kept some money in the budget, you know? It would probably cost more to shut you down and disassemble everything. So here you go. Here's enough to keep you going. You know, it's like you've got a contractor building a building, and you only give him enough money to, you know, pay his payroll and never buy any of the supplies. Building's never going to get built. So because we've got a complete economic collapse, that should be pretty liberating in recognizing that we can change dramatically the way the economy's run, because it's completely wrong right now. So let's have a complete change. Who likes it the way it is? So a big shift is in order. Let me start. Let's look at the. I want to start with a quote from Vladimir Vernadsky, who is a Russian-Ukrainian bio-geo-noochemist. He did it all. And this is from a paper that he wrote in 1925 when he was living in France. And it's a precursor to his later concept of the noosphere. So you might recognize this quote. Vernadsky said that man is profoundly distinguished from the other organisms by his action on the environment. This distinction, which was great from the beginning of mankind, has become immense with the passage of time. The action of other organisms is almost exclusively determined by their growth and increase, by their physical bodies. Mankind certainly acts in the same way, but his mass is completely negligible in comparison with the totality of living matter, and its direct manifestations of his nutrition and body are almost nothing. Reason changes all. Through it, man utilizes material in the environment, inanimate or living, not only for the building of his body, but also for social life. And this usage has become a great geological force. Thought, by its existence, introduces into the crustal mechanisms a powerful process having no analog before the appearance of man. So he recognized that among the physical principles that are out there, you know, you look at geology, the formation of different layers of rocks, you look at the motion of the planets around the sun, you understand electricity, magnetism, things like this. He said the power of thought, that is something that you can study as a scientist. It's a force in the universe. We are a force of nature, just like these other ones, and increasingly much more powerful than any of these other ones, despite the small size of ourselves and our bodies. If you think of a coral reef being formed, that's actually bodies of coral. It's sort of a gruesome image, but if we were trying to build our houses out of bones, sorry, that's totally disgusting, but we don't do that, right? Our bodies are insignificant to what we do. They really don't matter. They don't matter. Now, there are some people, by that I mean British people, who have said that this progress of ours will reach its end. You may have heard of Thomas Malthus. Anybody heard of Malthus? Right. He said, I don't know where he pulled this, well, I can imagine where he pulled it out of. He said that while population growth is geometric, the productivity of the land only increases arithmetically. That's just not true, but that's what he said. But now, I want to read a quote from an American who wrote a book on economic development in 1879. He said, if bears, instead of men, had been shipped from Europe to the North American continent, there would now be no more bears than in the time of Columbus. But within the limits of the United States alone, there are now 45 million men where there were only a few 100,000. And yet there is now within that territory much more food per capita for the 45 million than there was for the few 100,000. Is not the increase of food? It is not the increase of food that has caused the increase of men, but the increase of men that has caused the increase of food. There is more food because there are more men. The other thing he didn't mention is that the first Thanksgiving probably would have been the bears eating the Indians. So anyway, history would have been profoundly changed if the bears came over on the Mayflower. So This outlook of Malthus, it's just wrong. It's not how things happen. We're not consumers of things that are around us, like we're walking through the Garden of Eden and just, having a nectarine or something. We produce our food. So let's take a look at one of the amazing ways that we can change the earth for our benefit to make more food. And it's called NAWAPA. NAWAPA is the North American Water and Power Alliance. It was first proposed in the 1960s by an American engineering firm, and it calls for bringing water from Canada and Alaska into the United States, into the Southwest, and partially also into northern Mexico. This program would have doubled the agricultural land in Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, significantly introduced it in other states. It would also have called for the construction of some of the basically the largest dams the world had ever seen, the largest pumping station ever. It would create millions of jobs, and these jobs would be productive. Not just getting people to work and enjoying the fresh air, although that's good too, but this would dramatically increase our ability to have a stable supply into the future and not depend on the whims of the weather. Let's take a look at the next one. So this is sort of Canada's on the right, there's Baja California on the left. So this is the motion of the water through the system, and you see an elevation chart here. So as the water is moving from 5 to 7, you see a very large pump, labeled as number 6, there in Idaho. This pumping system, as it was designed at the time in the 60s, uses as much electrical power as the entire state of New Jersey does today. It's a pretty big system, but there's actually going to use even more now. Let's take a look at the next. Okay, yeah, there's the figures. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, let's go back one. Now, we're going to update this. The NAWAPA 21 system, the updated NAWAPA, as LaRouche PAC has been developing, calls for some changes. One of them is that to get all of that pumping power, about half of the water that's collected is just let go into the ocean through hydro dams to make the electricity to then pay for the pumping. If we use nuclear plants, we can keep all that water. We don't have to let it go to the sea. We'll have twice as much water available for distribution. So now you're looking at increasing the amount of water in Arizona or New Mexico by 4 times. Think about all the extra food you can make. Because there's plenty of water. I mean, water in Alaska and northern Canada, it's really hard to do very much good with it. Plants need a couple of different things. One of them is water. The other one is sunshine. Yeah, that's not the sunniest place on the planet. It's not that warm. It's hard to grow when it's freezing. You're definitely not going to have cherry trees and things like that. So let's go ahead and let's look at some of the other differences. This is a chart of average wind flow and moisture flow through the atmosphere. So this is the whole planet we're looking at. And you can see those little arrows give an idea of the net flow. So over the United States, wind flows from the west to the east generally. That's how weather systems move. That's how the water moves. In other places, look at the northern part of South America. The wind moves the opposite way, from the east to the west, on the 2 sides of the equator. Let's take a look at the next one, because there's a problem in the United States, or in North America, rather. You can see the dark blue color represents the amount of rainfall. So there's plenty of rain on the East Coast and the southeast for sure. In the central part of the country, there's almost none. It's very dry. And there's a huge amount on the Pacific coast. All that rain is landing on the Pacific coast. It's not moving inland. It goes right out to the ocean. So why is all that rain staying there? There's a mountain range, the Rocky Mountains. So that's keeping the water from being able to move any further. Let's take a look at the next one. Here you got a chart. This is the photosynthetic activity on the North American continent. So you can see along the Pacific coast in the northern part, the northwest, red is less and then purple is more. There's very little plant life going on up there. Plenty of water, but no sunshine. In in New Mexico, Arizona, there's obviously plenty of sunshine and no water. But then you see, in the eastern part of the country, the transition from green to yellow is where you might officially say the western states begin. There's what's called the 20-inch rainfall line, where if you go further west than that, it's just hard to have productive crops. So if we can change this arbitrary distribution of water on the continent, because let's face it, there's nothing particularly great about nature if it's not good. I mean, having a drought, you don't say, well, that's just how nature wanted it, and that's beautiful. And we should really appreciate that and enjoy being thirsty. And frankly, AstroTurf lawns look great, and it's okay if we don't have any food. That's just how it is this year. Or floods. We can say, what a beauty. I am in touch with the god of rain. All this moisture is great for my rotting basement. No. Just because things are a certain way doesn't mean they're any good. You know, part of this environmentalist thing is that instead of protecting the environment so that it's good for people, it's just become anti-human. That whatever it's like, if we don't do anything, that's how it should be. That's just saying people shouldn't exist. Or we should at least exist as little as possible. Try not to be noticed, you know? Let's go ahead and look at the next one. So this is a chart worldwide, this is interesting, about how much of the rain that falls came from water that evaporated over land. It's a funny concept. For example, you see if you look at China, well, look at Mongolia. Basically, all the rain that's landing in Mongolia evaporated over land. Water on the land evaporated, and then that rained in Mongolia. They're not getting any from the oceans. Look at the United States. On the west coast, all the rain that falls there evaporated from the ocean and then fell on the land. We can obviously make more use of some of this water. Let's take a look at the next one. Here you get of water evaporating from the land, how much is going to then fall back onto the land. I'm just showing these to make the point that there's a wide variety in the world, and we shouldn't think there's anything so special about the way North America is right now if it stinks, which it does. Look at the next one here. So let's talk about power. So Bruce already addressed a lot of this. The implications of a new NAWAPA system today would be that we'd have twice as much water because we won't have to use any for hydropower, and also the potential to use nuclear techniques in construction. For example, the peaceful use of nuclear bombs for building tunnels, for example. I mean, some of these tunnels are, 60 miles long. So if you're building a tunnel and you got a tunnel boring machine on each side and they're moving towards each other, they're only going to get there but so fast, and it's not very fast. These things don't move very quickly. There were a lot of studies done in a program called Operation Plowshare, part of the Atoms for Peace that was launched by Eisenhower, where the use of shaped atomic charges, reasonably small ones, fission bombs, was studied to be able to actually, punch holes through for building of tunnels, for building of canals. There were plans for decades to build the Kra Canal in Thailand using peaceful nuclear explosions because it moves things so much quicker. That's a potential for us now. It's a potential for us now overall using the NAWAPA approach as sort of a guide for where we want to go as an economy. To say, let's build a huge project that's going to employ millions of people, that'll make us more productive, that'll make us more independent from the whims of nature, that'll greatly improve our food supply. Let's also move forward on fusion. If not now, when? Remember, because things are so bad, it means we need to have very large changes. So if we're developing fusion power, if we're finally putting together that stellarator that Princeton Plasma Physics Lab built, and then they just don't have the money to put the two halves together, which is where the Obama administration has left them, we can really move forward by some leaps. Take a look at this. This is electrical generation per capita in the United States. You can't see the years, they go from 1950 to today. Well, actually, if it continued to today, it would have gone down further. You can see, through our recent history, through the past half century, the amount of electricity per capita overall has gone from 2,000 to a level of about 14,000. But look at the rate of growth. Can you see when it's starting to slow down? Let's also break it down by power source in the next graph here. Oh, well, this is interesting too. Electricity is making up more and more of our total energy use, in addition to, petroleum or gas for heating or for industry. Next one? Okay, here we go. So take a look at this. In terms of our overall energy use, not just electricity, but any kind of energy. In the 1700s, what do you use for energy? Wood. That's what you have. Right, then you see how once you've got coal, the wood seems a little bit less appealing. Right? Coal burns hotter. It's at a certain point you're going to run out of trees. Actually, this is interesting. I heard the statistic for the state of Pennsylvania that the over 50%, in fact, I think actually a large majority of the forests currently in Pennsylvania didn't exist 150 years ago. They were all cut down to build houses and to burn the wood. Now these trees, they're obviously, if they're getting cut down faster than they're growing again, you're going to run out of wood, which is actually the direction things went. So you can see with the introduction of coal, now an environmentalist back then might have said, whoa, if we run out of trees, we're dead, so let's die slowly and just, reduce our use of wood. Now forget it, we have coal. Then wood can be used for building houses instead of burning. Then you've got petroleum, natural gas. You got nuclear, which, it started and then it never really got anywhere. I mean, today, this is for total energy. For electricity, it's about 25% of U.S. production. But why didn't it take off? If it had, we wouldn't be using, it's really stupid to be using petroleum the way that we do. Like, look for a piece of plastic near you. That came from petroleum. Okay? You actually make things out of petroleum. You make plastics out of petroleum. Burning it is about as sensible as burning wood when you could be using it to build something. Or burning food, which we're also doing. Taking perfectly good corn that didn't do anything wrong to you and then burning it. Let's take a look at what should have happened. So imagine if these kinds of shifts that we saw had continued the way past developments in our economy had. We didn't have environmentalists complain, in the back earlier. You can see where we would have gone with fission, with fusion. I mean, even just with fission, you would expect today's per capita energy usage to be about 3 times what it is right now, if the trend up until the 60s had continued. 3 times as much per capita, both because it stopped growing and because each person's using less. But this isn't where we went. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay. So here's an overall chart. This is human population. And it seems to be, it's shooting up, right? World population has been zooming upwards. But let's take a look a slightly more recent time period. Let's take a look at the next one. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay? Take a look at that. World population growth rates. Look where we are. About 1%. In the early 60s, 2%. So in the past 50 years, the rate of population growth has dropped in half. It's already happening. People saying the world's population is growing too fast, we've got to slow it down. That's already happening. All right? That's exactly what the policies we've got right now were intended to do, and that's what they're succeeding in doing. They're reducing the growth of the population. So think about the overall... Let's go to the next one, just get the black screen. So we got a problem with this supposedly environmentalist outlook. It's better just called anti-human, because it's really not about the environment. It's about removing people, and it uses supposed concern about the environment as a way of making their point. But that's not the real point. The point is to prevent human society from developing and from being free from oligarchical rule. The threat to the empire has been developing nations. Why did Britain want to keep the colonies weak? It's much easier to keep them in control. Same as look at their policy anywhere else. And now there is this, I forget if it was Time or Newsweek, had the article about a child-free lifestyle. It sounds like, I don't know, like not eating carbs, or, if you put agave syrup in your coffee because, you didn't want to use sugar, but now you heard NutraSweet's bad, so now you're going to use agave or something. I'm sugar-free, child-free. Now... supposedly it's about your own children. That, hey, if you don't have any kids, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You're just living a child-free life. It's like, you don't eat meat or something. But it's really about other children. It's saying, overall, let's be a child-free society. If we don't have children, they won't grow up. We'll have less people. And that's the future we should head towards. Basically, what we really need to move towards, we need to have concern for our world, and we need to be, very forward-thinking and go extinct. That's really what we need to aspire to. Don't use any energy. Leave no carbon footprint. Don't let your children leave carbon footprints. In fact, don't let them have feet. Don't give birth to them in the first place. And if they're born, maybe we could turn them into gasoline. Maybe that'll be the next thing. Now, Thomas, Swift wrote about that, but it's, as a joke, but that's, don't give these guys ideas. So overall, we've got to reject this prevailing. It's just everywhere. Everywhere. You can't turn around without some product, talking about how green it is, like you care, or making you. It's everywhere. That's got to be rejected. We have got a very beautiful human species that has got the potential. Every person, every child born anywhere on this planet could be that genius who discovers how to control AIDS, cancer, makes a breakthrough in fusion, antimatter. Some child that could have done that, but who died of starvation, they might have been born last week and then died this week. So we need to have a plan for the future. I think we've been laying one out. The NAWAPA 21 is a way of putting it together as a specific project for the United States, at the least, to give a very direct direction for where we're going, and coupled with the breakthroughs we need to make in fusion to continue that trend of qualitative leaps in our power. And the future can be almost unimaginable, but we're going to have to eliminate this oligarchical outlook politically with Glass-Steagall, through removing Obama, and also it's socially, it's around, it's in the air, and you cannot be afraid to fight against that and root it out in yourself, to the extent you might be thinking, yeah, but isn't there just something wrong about moving that water? Isn't there something unholy about doing that? I don't know. That's like, defacing the temple or something. It isn't. This is our world, and we need to make it a much better one. Thanks.